Hi, I'm Dorcas, and today I'm going to be talking about viral faith. First, I would like to talk about tools. We have a hammer, a pair of tweezers, and a pencil. These are tools, obviously. And if you have a specific need, you want one of these tools. If there's a nail sticking up out of this porch floor and I'm snagging my toe on it, I really want a hammer. I want this specific tool, and I go over there, I pound the nail in, the porch floor is safe again. I'm so happy to have this specific tool. If I have a splinter in my finger, ouch, ouch, or a chin hair, I really want tweezers. So I pull out that splinter or get that chin hair, I'm happy. Tweezers is excellent for that. If I want to write down a grocery list, make a note to myself, whatever, I want a pencil. A pencil is really good at what it does. The problem is, if we expect more from a tool than it's designed to give. If I expect the hammer to make me into a great carpenter or to somehow make my porch just the cleanest, prettiest, best decorated porch in Oregon, that's not going to happen. It'll pound in a nail for me, but that's it. And it does it really well, but I can't expect more from this hammer than what it can give. The same with tweezers. It'll pull a chin hair, thankfully. Will it make me win the Miss Oregon pageant? I don't think so. Will it make me happy inside? Not really. It'll be nice to get the splinter out, but it doesn't satisfy my heart. The pencil is nice for jotting down ideas, but will it write a book? Will it write an article? No, not unless I put a lot of work behind it. It won't do it by itself. I'd like to talk today about some other tools that most of us have. Cell phone, and mine is old. I don't have a smartphone. But this is my modern little tablet with a keyboard that I really like. And on this, there's a Google Maps right there, and I can look up things, I can write, I can email, I can check Facebook, I can do all kinds of things with this tool. I can look up recipes. It's an amazing tool. The problem comes when we expect more from these tools than they're able to give. If you think that Facebook, texting, whatever, will make people think better of you, or if you think that they will give you real friends, or give you an image of having this wonderful, happy life, or if you think they'll make you famous somehow, or make this guy fall in love with you, or if you just feel like if you project yourself right on Facebook, or send the right pictures to the right person on your phone, that hunger inside of you for meaning and for purpose and for belonging, that will be satisfied. Well, that is asking things of these tools that they are absolutely not designed to give, and never can. The only one that can satisfy that hunger in your soul deep down is Jesus. And you will always have those longings until you ask Jesus to fill them. People are going to judge you by your character, the choices you make, and so on, not by who you present yourself to be on Facebook. So these things are not magic wands. They cannot do miracles. They do what they're designed to do, and they do it well. But if you expect more from them than they're able to do, then you're in trouble. Now, I will say, they are wonderful tools. Later today, we're going to talk about some amazing things that you can do for God's kingdom with these tools. But first, there's another thing I'd like to talk about, and that's the comparing the real thing with the substitute. Back in my mom's day, if you made a pie and you wanted something fluffy and sweet on top, you would take some cream, either from the store or from your cow that you'd skimmed off the milk, and you would whip it up and add sugar and vanilla, and you would plop it on top of your pie or your apple crisp, and it was this yummy, sweet, actually nutritious topping for your dessert. Well, somewhere along the way, somebody invented Cool Whip. And this is not Cool Whip because I'm cheap, it's whipped topping. It's white and sweet and fluffy like whipped cream, and you can put it on top of your pie, but it is not the real thing. It's a substitute. It's not nutritious. It's all chemicals. Eventually, people somehow got this switched around, and I remember talking to a teenage girl who was doing some baking, and she said, I ran out of Cool Whip, so I had to use whipped cream. And then she told me how she actually got this cream in the fridge and she whipped it up and made whipped cream, and it was a weird experience because they didn't have Cool Whip. And I thought, okay, that's a little bit weird. Why not go for the real thing, even though it tends to get mushy faster, it's better. Sometimes in relationships, we do the same thing, and we choose the substitute and the second best and the less nutritious over God's best for us. In relationships, certain things are real and solid, and they're God's design for us. And they should always be your first choice if you have the option. And in relating to people, that would be face-to-face conversation, relationships, community, church, family, being with actual physical people, interacting, having good times together, going through difficult times together, working together, and just learning from people's faces how they're feeling, learning to take hints, learning what people might be saying that they're not really saying. All those things come from personally interacting face-to-face with people. And if you have the option, those should be your first choice. Things like texting, friends on Facebook, chat groups, things like that. They can be tools that are useful, but they're the substitutes. They're not the real thing. And sometimes it's very tempting because it's easy to portray a side of yourself or a persona online that's not real. And online friendships are less threatening and less difficult than real friendships. For example, maybe you're the youngest one in the youth group, you always feel awkward at youth gatherings, and it's so tempting to leave early and go home and just get on Facebook and have a fun little chat with a few friends who understand you and all of that. But my advice is always choose the real over the substitute if you can. And I, at 51 years old, still have to deal with this. There's something easy about online friendships, and I like to write, and I enjoy quick little chats with people. And one of the easy things about those friendships is that it can happen at 6 in the morning, it can happen at 11 at night, I can be in my pajamas, I can just do a quick little message and then go on with my day or go to bed or whatever. Whereas real life friendships, they take planning. You have to often leave some work to go spend time with a person. It's more difficult. And my birthday came along. And you know how you do on your birthday, you check your Facebook all day long to see if people are wishing you a happy birthday. And I was so happy because pop, 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 pop. Here came all these birthday messages from over 100 people. Oh, I feel so happy. And then I thought the next day, how many actual live birthday cards or phone calls did I get for my birthday from real live friends? And I realized in the last couple of years, I have not invested in real live friendships like I should. I've actually invested more in online friendships, so I'm going to change that. But I say that to say we can all learn and grow in that area. So I'd like to talk about how to use technology and social media in good, healthy ways to help your life, help your friendships, build up God's kingdom. So think about God's priorities. What's important to God? God's highest priority is people. He loves us. And so relationships are important to him. Connection, communication, encouragement, friendships, comfort, all those things are important to God. And most of all, spreading his love, spreading the gospel to others. And so those should be our priorities too. And so if you can think of electronic media and technology as tools to work on God's priorities for people, they'll be very effective. So what are some of these specific methods we can use? Well, there's email, there's texting, blogs, there's your phone, talking on the phone, Twitter, which I'm not really familiar with, and online groups, all kinds of things. And who are some people you can bless with these? Parents, grandparents, relatives, friends, missionaries, even strangers. And I hesitate to be really specific about some of these things like email and blogs because the social media world changes so fast that things very quickly get obsolete, but the same principles apply. It used to be that young people communicated by email and with Zangas. If you remember Zangas, it was a blog host site, and it seemed like every young person had their Zanga. And now both have pretty much disappeared among young people, but other things have taken their place, and the same principles apply to all of these things. Let's talk about the phone first of all. A cell phone can be a lifesaver, and I think about that because I remember when we first got one and the difference it made in our lives. But it can also destroy your relationships with people. And the number one rule with cell phones is when you're with people, you keep your cell phone away. If you're expecting a call that your mom is landing at the airport, yes, keep your cell phone with you and check your texts, but otherwise be with the people that you're with and focus on them. Face-to-face is always first priority. And I think sometimes there's a temptation to create an illusion of ourselves. If we're with a group of people, we're feeling awkward, we're feeling kind of left out, and if we can get our cell phone, get a text, we look like we belong somewhere. So a cell phone is a tool and you can use it well. I remember the days of people picking up other people at the airport and not having cell phones, and one time my sister was flying into Minneapolis and they missed their connection and called mom and dad's and to say, don't go to the airport yet, we're going to be late. And my brother had already left, and we actually called the police to stop him, and he said he would have had a heart attack if a policeman stopped him. And somehow at the airport he got the message that the plane was delayed, or the flight was delayed a few hours. So it all worked out, but it would have been very nice to have cell phone. In the old days of our family, when harvest time came along, we had little children, and my husband would be gone for 16 hours a day, sometimes more. And I basically had no way of getting hold of him unless he was at our grass seed warehouse when the phone rang. And so it was not easy, and we felt like our lives had improved a lot when we got a pager. And so I would call the pager and it would buzz, and then when he got to a phone, he would call me back. So I really like cell phones. They're an excellent tool. And again, it's all about connection and communication with people. So so there's all kinds of ways to use it well. You can text a friend that's going through a hard time, and in the questionnaire that some of you answered, a lot of you mentioned that's one way that you use phones, is to encourage friends that are going through hard times. Maybe send a prayer, something like that. When you're in town, text your mom and see if she needs milk and eggs. Or when you're on a trip, keep your parents informed about where you are. There's all kinds of ways to use that tool. And there's an interesting positive thing that has come out of social sites and group forums on the internet, and that is that people that used to feel very alone with a particular problem now can be part of a group. For example, if you were a teenager with a chronic illness like diabetes or muscular dystrophy or something, back in the old days you would probably have been the only teenager that you knew that struggled with that chronic condition. Well, thanks to the internet, you can be part of a group, you can interact with people who go through the same problems that you do, and people find it very helpful. My husband and I spent 3 years on an Indian reservation up in Canada, and one of the huge problems that I faced there was loneliness. We had 3 little children. Much of the year it was really cold, and so it was hard to take children outside to go visiting when it was 30 or 40 below zero. And it was very difficult to connect with the local people one-on-one. The culture, they were nice people, but they were not particularly warm and welcoming, and I was not able to learn very much of the language. And so I think back and I think, man, if I could have been part of an online group or had Facebook or something to connect with other moms, it would have been so helpful. I would not have felt so alone. Recently I interviewed a young lady named Sandra who had a blog some years ago. Actually, she had 2 blogs, and it was very interesting getting her perspective. She said she grew up in El Salvador, and she did not have a youth group at their church, and so she was quite lonely, and so her mom said it's okay if she starts a blog. So she started 2 of them, one for photography and one for writing. And that was a great outlet for her to process her thoughts and what she was going through and share her creativity and to connect with other young people. And she said she got to know a whole network of young people that way, and it was a lifesaver for her. But it was interesting to me that she also said once she was an adult, went to the United States, went to Bible school, and got a job, I think, she got to know people face-to-face, one-on-one, and then she no longer needed that online relationship with people, which reinforces what I said, that the best choice, if you have the option, is always face-to-face, but social media can be a great tool when you're off by yourself somewhere, when you're alone, when for some reason you cannot connect face-to-face. I'd like to mention just a few pitfalls of social media and an online presence. One is that it creates an illusion, and especially with Facebook, there can really be a temptation to present yourself in a certain way that's not really real. So last week one night, my kids threw a party, and there were a lot of people here, and I went outside, and man, there was a crowd out by the volleyball net, and lots of cars in the driveway, and it actually crossed my mind to take a picture of this and put it on Facebook to prove that I actually do have a life. And I'm embarrassed to say that, but I just say that to be honest, that I can relate to that, but I didn't do that. Another pitfall for me is wasting time online. I'm the type of person that can start reading a book or reading something online, and I completely lose track of time, and 45 minutes or an hour later I just sort of come back to life and, oh my goodness, what have I been doing? And so I really have to be proactive with that and set timers and keep track of myself. Another pitfall for me is if my life is difficult, sometimes I just want to escape, and so it's easy to get online and read the news or read blogs or whatever, and that's just my escape, and it's not healthy. And with that, I really need to be accountable to somebody, get help, something. And also, sometimes I struggle with depression, particularly in the middle of winter. And when I spend too much time online, often that is an indication to me that my depression is flaring up. And so I need to be proactive with that. And it can kind of be both ways, where too much time online can make me depressed, but usually it's the other way around, where that's a symptom, and then that alerts me. I need to take my vitamin D, take my whatever, get outside, go on walks, talk to people, and I also like to make myself accountable to my children. I'll say things like, okay, if I get online before 7 o'clock tonight, I have to pay you $1. And then it's not much, but it keeps me aware of it, so I don't just mindlessly go on the computer and start clicking. But, so those are some of the pitfalls, but let's go back to some of the good things that can come out of these tools. Facebook is wonderful for keeping in touch in a general way with a lot of people. We have lived in a lot of places, we've gotten to know a lot of people, and I don't like being totally out of touch with them, and yet I can't keep up 150 relationships with writing letters and on the phone. And so Facebook is a really handy way just to get a brief update of their lives. It also lets me keep in touch with family and extended family without investing a lot of time. And it's a great way to spread news if you need to. When my mom broke her hip, I did not have time to call the relatives that should have been aware of it, and so I just posted something on Facebook to this one cousin, and I knew he would spread the word, and that's what happened. Email is not as popular with young people anymore, but it is a great tool. Email lets you think through what you want to say and spend time at it. You can leave it and come back to it, and it's very private. So it's a good way to have a conversation with somebody that you don't want public, and it requires more thought than a text. Another wonderful thing is Skype. And if you're not familiar with Skype, it's basically an online phone line. And so you sit down at the computer with a headset, plug it in, and then you click on the other person's Skype username. And if they're online, then you can connect. And if you're really lucky, you have video Skype, and you can actually talk back and forth and see the other person on your screen. Our son Ben is in Toronto for a year, working with a mission there, and it's very expensive and inconvenient to call back and forth, but we can connect on Skype. About once a week we do that. It's wonderful to see him on the screen there, see how he's looking, and I tell him he needs to get a haircut and all that. It's a wonderful way to connect. And if you have missionaries in your church or in your family, Skype and email are wonderful ways to encourage them. Missionaries can feel so far away from what's going on, so far away from family, and this is a real personal way to communicate with them, and the most wonderful thing about it is that it's free. Another use for email is for communicating about difficult things. Sometimes there's a person in your life that you interact with face to face, but there's just certain things about your relationship that are really awkward and difficult to talk about face to face. And so it's fine in those situations just to say, how would you feel about communicating about this through email? And then just have your little back and forth, and it's private, and there's something not quite as threatening about talking about difficulties in a relationship through email. And you can, especially if you're not good at thinking on your feet, email gives you time to process a response. And I would not recommend this for all the time, every situation, but sometimes it can really be a lifesaver. Okay, for this segment, I'd like to focus on some guidelines and rules and suggestions for blogging or any kind of online presence that you have. It might be Facebook posts, notes you write on Facebook, comments on online forums. Maybe you actually write articles online. Basically, any kind of a public platform. And here again, that whole world is changing so fast, so basically anything that you write or post for the public to see. I have a blog. It's called Life in the Shoe. It's at dorcassmucker.blogspot.com if you want to look it up. And Life in the Shoe refers to the old woman who lived in a shoe. I've had that blog for about 8 years. It's been a very rewarding experience for me. I first started it when my husband's nephew would talk to me about blogging, and I did not know what this was. I sort of vaguely knew he had a blog, but he would say, "Aunt Dorcas, you need a blog." And so finally I gave in to him, and I said, "Okay, how do I do this?" And he said, "Go to blogger.com and get started." And so I did. And it's been a very good thing in my life, especially as a writer. A blog is an excellent way to meet a lot of your goals as a writer. I process things by writing, and it's very rewarding for me to get it out in words and have it posted so people can comment and get responses, and I can understand if people got what I was saying or if they completely missed the point and I need to put it differently. It's free, which is very nice. It's a great discipline for me to come up with something every week or a couple times a week or whatever. And I also write a newspaper column in a local newspaper, and I find that often I first start thinking about something and start writing about it on my blog, and then it later morphs into a more formal essay that goes in the newspaper. It's a great way to connect with people, and it gives me incentive to be creative and to think creatively, and it's a way to live out my Christian life in a public way. I live out in the country, I'm a stay-at-home mom, but a blog and other writing that I do, it lets me live out my Christian life in a way that a much broader world can see it. And it's a way to be a witness of Jesus and his work in my life. So I'd like to share a few things that I've learned that would apply to you in any kind of public forum that you contribute to. The first thing is to keep Jesus first. The Bible says that you speak out of the abundance of your heart. And so it's very important to guard your heart, to keep Jesus first, and you will be amazed at the ways in which Jesus shows himself out of your life in ways that you never intended.
Are you Dorcas Smucker?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Sadie Miller.
Hi, Sadie.
Something you wrote changed my life.
Something I wrote?
Yes. In 2005, I think you wrote something about adopting Stephen?
Yes, our son, yes.
Well, you said to Paul, you had this written on your blog, you said, "What if I don't like him?"
I remember that.
And Paul said, "Well, do you always like me?" And you said no. And that just changed my life. That was exactly what I needed to hear then.
I'm glad to hear it. And I have to say that I never set out to inspire somebody with that little conversation about adopting Stephen and what if I don't like him. I will say I know I have written things that were a lot more profound than that. But for some reason, that spoke to that lady from Virginia. And that was Jesus working in my life, I think, because it was not something I could have scripted. The second thing is try to write well. Back in the Zanga days, there was this blog that I would read, and the reason I would read it was because my son had a crush on this girl, and she would write things like, "Yo, my sweet peeps, how you doing?" No capitals, no punctuation, just sort of rambling, weird words. And it was horrifying. and thankfully my son got over his crush on her. But you'll be much more effective in anything that you write if you try at least a little bit to be coherent, to be precise, concise, don't use too many words, edit your stuff a little bit, make sure you have some capital letters and some commas and periods in there. Much more effective. The third thing is respect confidences. Be very, very careful about sharing anything that someone shared with you. Always check with them, and also be very careful about naming people online. And I've had some very bad experiences with this. One time a relative came by and told me a story about my husband's great-grandfather, I think it was, and I thought it was very interesting. It didn't put him in a very good light, but it was a good story, and so I posted it online. And I had some relatives who were furious at me because I posted this story online about great-grandpa. So that was a lesson for me. Another time I wrote about a situation where my husband was injured and had to go get stitches, and I wrote about it for the newspaper, and I actually named the doctor who stitched him up, and that doctor called me up and reamed me out like I have never been reamed out before or since, for he thought putting him in a negative light, even though I didn't mean it that way. And so I am very, very gun shy about naming anybody in any kind of a public forum. The fourth thing to remember is to be real. And there's a balance here. Okay, we really don't want a fake persona. Smile, smile, everything's fine, everything's wonderful, I have lots of friends, I'm cool, I'm happy all the time. You make mistakes, you're a normal person, it's okay to share that. However, if I have a stomach flu and I need to throw up, you don't want to see me do that. I need to go in the bathroom, shut the door, and be all by myself, and then I throw up. And nobody wants to see that. And there's certain things that sometimes we're tempted to post online, but nobody wants to hear it. You know, I am just so frustrated with your dad, and I've tried to teach him how to clean up after himself in the bathroom, like with his shaver. Like it's nice he cleans it out, but he does it in the sink, and he just taps it on there, and all this fuzzy hair stuff just goes all over the sink.
Mom, we really don't need to hear this.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, but it's really frustrating for me. And then when he showers and shampoos his hair, and it's just like... So don't do that. Number 6, sleep on it. As women, as young ladies, we have a lot of emotions. And sometimes it really helps to process those emotions by writing about it. And so we sit down, write it out, and it's very tempting to hit send, to hit post, to hit enter, but sometimes it's not the best idea. And so what I recommend is write it all out, and then go to bed, get a good night's sleep, and then the next morning look at it. And you'll have a much better perspective, and you'll probably take out about a third of it, the most intense things. It's like, don't think the world needs to see that, but I can still share that I'm struggling with something. That's okay. And then you post it after you've slept on it and you've taken a few paragraphs out. Number 7. I said keep calm with comments. Now, if you're writing in any sort of way, your goal is to communicate. And so comments and feedback are going to mean a lot to you. But it's very easy to look at comments as a sort of validation of who you are. You're an okay person, you're gifted, you wrote something worthwhile. But I recommend that you don't do that. Those kinds of things are in your heart And those are the kinds of needs that Jesus can satisfy. And only Jesus can satisfy those needs for validation for who you are, for your worth. Comments cannot do that. And sometimes comments are kind of extreme as far as gushy. Oh, you're such a wonderful writer. And it's best to have a sense of humor about that. So when somebody comments in a positive way, I try to look at it as, hey, I met my goal. I communicated with that person. That's great. Number 8, give yourself grace. We need grace because we're sinners. We're very imperfect people. And grace means we're covered, we're taken care of, we're righteous in the sight of God. And the opposite of grace is shame, where we feel like, I am so bad, I'm a failure, I somehow have to try to be good enough to become somebody, to be saved, to be in with God, something. But we have grace. And so you need to give yourself grace as a writer. Years ago, when I first started writing a newspaper column, I wrote a column about my sister and myself, and I mentioned that when we were teenagers, we went out to the coast for a few days, and we watched Gone with the Wind on TV. And I had a few people who were very upset with me for writing that in a public newspaper and setting a bad example. And, were they right or wrong? I don't know. But I realized that it probably would have been best in some ways if I would have left that out. And I felt very shamed. I felt like I was so bad. I had no business writing. I had no discretion, on and on. And finally I thought, I am never going to learn to be a writer, to write things for the public audience without making some mistakes. And so, do I believe in grace or not? And I decided, yes, I do believe in grace. Okay, well then, I'm just going to learn from this. Sorry. And move on. Number 9 is, it's an illusion. No matter how hard you try, you will not be able to portray who you really are online or in your writing. And so you need to learn to just be okay with that. Sandra, the young lady I talked to from El Salvador, she said when she came to the United States, there were people that had read her blog, and they would say, oh, I know you, I read your blog. And she would think, oh, you don't know me, we've never met. So you create an illusion, but it's okay. People come to me, or particularly to my children sometimes, and they say, how do you feel about the fact that I know all about your life? And my children smile politely and say something polite, and then when they're out of earshot, they say, yeah, right, you know all about my life. Because the truth is, I write a few thousand words a month for people to read, and if you have a family of 8 people, there's an awful lot going on that's not covered in those several thousand words. Number 10. Don't freak out about who shows up. You'll be amazed at who reads stuff that you post. And it's okay. But I need to say this to myself too, because I tend to sort of relax and, I get the feeling that my blog is read by a few friends, a few family, and then I go to some church convention or something, and some stern, intimidating minister from Pennsylvania tells me that he reads my blog, and I completely freak out, and I think, oh my goodness, I am never writing about anything personal again. I am only writing about the weather, maybe the garden, how the harvest is going. That's all I'm writing about. And then after a while, I calm down, and I forget about the minister from Pennsylvania, and I write about real life again. Number 11. Be careful with controversy. It is amazing how quickly controversy and big flaming fights can flare up on the internet. People say things online that they would never say to your face, and it can blindside you with how quickly that can happen and how vicious it can get. And so do not intentionally start a debate online unless you're ready for negative feedback. Number 12, delete the drama. It's your Facebook, it's your blog, it's perfectly fine if you delete any drama that shows up.
I had so much fun shopping at Walmart today. I got so many great deals. Post!
What? You shop at Walmart? Don't you know that everything in their store, no, every cent you save has been stolen from the pockets of Walmart employees and Indonesian sweatshop workers? I hope you think of this next time you wear that new skirt you bought.
What? Oh, that makes me mad. Okay. Go, Jenny. Good for you for shopping at Walmart. It's a great American institution, and just ignore that nasty, liberal, communist, un-American, Catholic Yankee that commented right before me. Send.
Delete, delete, delete.
One time I posted something fairly innocently and someone commented and said, well, it's no wonder your book sales are down if that's the attitude you have about people and yada yada. And I took this comment very seriously and I thought, oh, I wonder if they have a point. Maybe I wasn't nice. How should I answer them? And my daughter said, no, Mom, that wasn't kind of them at all. That's not how you handle things like that. They should have emailed you privately with their concerns. And she was right. And she said, Mom, delete it. So I did. Number 13 is do it your way. You don't have to copy anybody else. This is your forum. This is your blog. This is your Facebook, whatever you want to post online there, it's yours. And don't feel like there's a certain standard you have to live up to, a certain level of perfection. It's yours. Just have fun with it. And don't feel like you owe it to anyone to post things online, even if your Aunt Susie is contacting you and saying, oh, you should post again. You know, when you're ready, you post something again, whether it's every day or every month. Number 14 is you have a story to tell. And I want you to know that you have something valuable to say. If you are walking with Jesus, following Him, He is working out His will in your life and doing wonderful things in your heart. And when you share your life with others, that life of Jesus and what He's doing comes out, sometimes in ways you intend and often in ways that you don't intend. But you can really be a blessing by sharing your story with others. So just be yourself, be creative, whatever works best for you, if it's stories or just thinking about things and processing them in your writing, photography, or maybe you like to work with backgrounds and graphics and things like that. Just have fun with it. Maybe you like to write poetry. Whatever is you. Don't feel like you have to live up to somebody else's standards. Just be yourself, be real, and people will be blessed by it. And last, number 15, if you post something online, send me a link. I would love to see it. God bless you.